So let's get into the episode, because here's the thing, Yamato. In true Thorin fashion, I could just start with how, like, you know, things are going well for Fnatic. You got the same lineup again. You didn't lose any players. There was a lot of drama. So many avenues we could go to. But of course, in true Thorin fashion, I'd like to just break the ice and really comfortably start the episode by talking about the epic failure of the playoffs, where your team was up 2-0 in the upper bracket final. It was going great. You were definitely going to win the series. You were going to shit on whoever made it to the final. I reckon probably at MSI, you'd have had a shot at you. You have a pretty good fucking lineup. Maybe probably semis at a minimum. Who knows? That game 5 could be true. Oh, sorry, actually, Humanoid and Illisang just decided they really didn't want to go to MSI for apparently this split, and then yada yada yada. Next thing I know, G2's bloody won again, and now everyone in the world who sadly accurately assessed how good Flackhead is has to just turn off Twitter for the next 2 weeks. So, okay, Yamato, come on. Obviously now you've had the time. You've had the time to process.
Like, maybe we can start it somewhere even lighter, like the death of like a family member, or like your favorite dog or something. You know, like, you want to just you know, get right into it. Or...
Here's the thing, though, because to be fair, I know with Yamato's, especially with Yamato's coaching style, his coaching style is all about how you like take the fucking parts of the journey and process it turn it into something else. It's all that bullshit of like, you know, we win or we learn. Well, I'll tell you what, Yamato, you must have fucking learned a lot of stuff at the end of that play. So come on then, give us your side on it. Give us what did you learn from this split? Because by the way, in all seriousness, this is one of those examples where you're like, this is the best team you've ever had on paper. You got all the people you wanted pretty much. I mean, obviously there was some scenario, maybe Kabashard or something was in the mix, but generally you got like a dream lineup. So what do you think happened in this split? Because I will say this, by the way, one thing we on this show have tried to downplay is I think fans unfortunately did overreact to those results. Like a lot of people were making out like the team was shit or like, got to call these people. It's like, it's still an amazing roster on paper. So come on, give us your thoughts on why didn't Fnatic win? Were you supposed to win that split?
I think on paper, yes. I think in terms of the roster, I still deem it as a failure, right? It's, of course, easier for me to say from the inside what went wrong and so forth and what we needed to do different. I think first and foremost was just we started very late. I think we really underestimated how important it is to just, you know, start out earlier and to hash out, you know, a lot of the things that just required time. I think, you know, we just came in 2 weeks ahead of the start. They started the split like 14th January, which was very early, and most of the teams practiced ahead of time. I think G2 was one that already scrimmed back in the World Championship,
October,
I think,
or something.
Yeah, like they started building the roster very early, and I think this adds up if you know, do it the correct way. I think a big mistake of ours was setting the wrong expectations. Always when you join a new team, like based off your past experiences, you try to recreate what has worked in the past, but it's not always going to be the same. And we had people from different corners and different avenues, different like experiences. So if we don't actually work hard to actually, you know, put in the effort and time to make sure that we align on the most basic fundamentals of the game, we're going to reach a point where things are going to crash and burn. And always when you are working, at least in my experience, in Spring Split, it's a big learning curve for me personally, because I get to know a lot of the players personally too. And I see what works, how much I can trust them on certain aspects, and how much I need to like pull them back, how much I need to pull out the belt, and how I need to create a balance. And I think on my own end, there was things that were issues in the beginning, that there was this uncertain promise that they would kind of fix themselves with time, and they just didn't. So we were playing very poorly in scrims. We had like shit scrim performances. What Perk said was very true about our scrim performance. Like our scrim performance didn't reflect too well on what was going on stage. I think when we were playing those matches on stage, I think we could be a lot more serious and a lot more professional about it. And we could kind of, you know, put past a lot of the bullshit that occurred in scrims. And I think over time, everything that happened in scrims in terms of our performance kind of built up, because we have players that really, really enjoy winning scrims. That was like the main, you know, driving factor for us, which is inherently something that is negative and toxic, right? If the only goal that you're trying to do within a scrim is to win, and then if you can't win, you go into that natural kind of sphere where you're just chasing for kills because this is the only thing that feels rewarding. So we couldn't really set up a system where it felt rewarding to put in effort. It felt rewarding for anyone in the team, including me, to put in effort into something and us moving into a certain direction, because we took a lot of things that worked in the past that were easy for granted, and I think this is something that occurred on every end. So, for example, with this group, I think a struggle of ours was to actually bring honesty to group conversation. Most of the time, people were holding back, and in our so-called honeymoon phase, we were just playing nice. But in reality, there was always things hiding behind those words.
Why do you think people were holding back? They just weren't comfortable with each other, or too many big personalities? What do you think that was the issue?
I think it's just a mix of. I think at the beginning people were just acting nice, and then I think eventually, knowing how to teach others and how to communicate with others is a skill, right? You need to practice it. So you need to expose yourself to situations that you're not comfortable with. Like on my end, I am good at it because I actively engage in it all the time. But for some others, maybe not so much, and they function in environments where maybe others take stance within the team, and they are willing to engage in conversation and create conversation through those players that maybe talk a little bit less. On our end, it was, we're trying to fix it. Okay, I'm going to trust people to fix it. And then it went too far along the way to get, we were just coming into playoffs. We had that break, which was very good for us, and then we started scrimming. Things were good, but then we went back to the old habits of, how the scrims went. And then we beat G2. It felt good because we derived all of our confidence from the stage matches and our preparation. But then there was this element where we were like this ship that is just leaking. We're just trying to patch it together. We're just trying to cross the finish line rather than being that, force that gathers momentum and improves over time. It was rather we're trying to make sure that everyone's okay, and we're trying to win a final like that is not really going to work, because the moment the image of our confidence was shattered with the series against Rogue, it was very hard for us to bounce back. So to summarize it, I think expectations were bad. I think our process of improvement was quite bad, and of course I blame myself thoroughly for this. And now it feels a lot better because I have a lot more information to work with in regards to how the players are and what the group needs and some of the staff adjustments we've made. But I think we were a group of professionals that tried super, super hard because everyone was working their ass off, but we weren't really, a team in any shape or form. We didn't really share our experience and our knowledge in an appropriate manner because we took for granted maybe something I thought it was easy, and then I didn't share it with the players, and maybe it was like that sphere of breaking those barriers down and making sure that the knowledge ceiling is the same for all of the players wasn't something that we achieved so well. And I think it was because we lacked general, that honesty, that feedback system, and the leadership within the game. And in my mind, those are attributes that you can train and attributes that you need to work on, because inherently I have very good players. In Spring, I had very good players. There were moments within the split where I would argue that we were the best performing team at the time, right? Yeah. But we were not ramping up. We just had a good roster, and that was it. That was the only thing that carried us. And occasionally we had really, really good fucking preparation in terms of our opponents and reading the patch. And then it just kind of fell flat because G2 specifically caught up to us because they had a way better process of improvement.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on that, Dom? Otherwise, I've got something going on.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that stands out to me whenever I see a super team like this, and the one thing that I would ask you is, how do you form an identity with the super team? Because the main pitfall that all these super teams fall into is that because you actually have good players in every role, you have this approach where you think you can do everything all the time. It's like we can play carry tops, we can play carry mids, we can play roaming mids, we can play carry bot lane, we can play through all three lanes at all three times, or at any time. And that just, I think, makes it really complicated towards improvement, because instead of trying to refine one playstyle or a couple playstyles, you're trying to refine multiple different playstyles. And we heard Bwipo talk a little bit about this in NA with Team Liquid, that they kind of fell into the same pitfall. And I feel like you guys are very comparable to Team Liquid because it's a super team. You're essentially just the EU version of what Team Liquid is, where you have the super team ended up getting third place, most people considered you guys super strong, got reverse swept in that round, then got 3-0'd. It seems very similar. So my question to you is, like, how do you actually focus a team? Because I think that with a super team comes a lot of egos, because a lot of people prefer, and they want to be able to be a star within the team. They want to be able to carry games. How do you actually take away some of that responsibility from people, or put more responsibility on others? How do you create a good environment with a super team when you have talent everywhere?
I'd agree that that's like one of the challenges, because most of the time the ego comes from like a good place, like a place of success. Like in our
Multiple
case,
championships.
it's like I have a player from each of the rosters that were like the strong rosters of European history, like Wunder from G2, Marek from Mad Lions, and then Hilly from 2018, Fnatic, and so forth. So there's a lot of experience, and the ego comes from the right places. It isn't necessary that in some of these conversations that people are wrong or so forth when they're trying to discuss. It's more about like finding alignment. That was always the challenge, and I think it was evident for us in spring that this was like the biggest difficulty for us, where we took for granted some of the basics, but I think you have to go through the same process with any team, regardless of the skill level of the team. You kind of have to relearn the fundamentals through the lens of what the dynamic of the team is. Sometimes that's easier, sometimes that's harder, but knowing how to phrase and to frame things in a specific way that will make sense for everybody within the team is so important. So it was a very humbling experience for us in spring, and in our mind, like for me, it's almost it's kind of very similar to what happened to us like last year in spring, but in a different way. Because back then it's like I joined Fnatic. Okay, these are guys that beat me before. Let's see what they bring to the table, and let's see what I've been missing out on. But it was kind of the same process. It's like, oh, this is easy. When it comes to playoffs, we're gonna figure this out. This is no problem. Why do we have a presentation on this? This is fucking easy. Like, what the fuck are we doing with our time? And then we lose 3-0 to Schalke, right? Because all those devils kind of catch up to you. So now it's like, now we're starting from scratch, and we are keeping it as basic as possible and building on top of that, regardless of what people's history is. In the end, the game has been very similar for like the last 3 years in terms of how Riot has done changes. So the fundamentals and how well you do the basics of the game, and how well you align on them, and how you understand them individually and as a group is what is going to win out in the long run. So we are just accepting that we need to keep it as simple as possible and building on top of that. And we are trying to create situations where people are pushed to be honest and to share and give feedback within a group environment, rather than just waiting idly by and hoping for things to just solve themselves because in their mind it's fucking easy,
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, obviously, that must be tough is, like you say about earlier on when you were talking about the fact that you just expect that people, like players, will just get better or they'll just figure things out. That's actually another downside to having superstar talent. By the way, that was basically the whole story of what Vitality tried to sell everyone all split long. It's like, oh, don't worry about the regular split. Look at how good our players are. They'll almost trip over and win in the playoffs, and suddenly we'll be right there and we'll be, contending for the championship. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.